All right, so listen to this. You ready for this? We've got a whole bunch of stuff on Brainbees Solutions Limited.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, an earnings call, transcript investor presentation, and a press release all about their latest results.
Wow.
It's like we're getting a sneak peek behind the curtain to see how they're really doing financially.
Yeah, and it's not every day we get this level of
I
insight.
know, right? And believe me, it's going to be interesting.
I'm sure it will be. The chance to hear straight from the company's leaders about their strategies and what they're up against, that's gold.
Absolutely. We're not just looking at numbers here. We're going to figure out the whole story, what's really making this company tick. Now, for anyone who needs a quick refresher, Brainbees is the company behind First Cry.
Right, the big one.
Yeah, the biggest retailer for baby and kid stuff in India and the Middle East. And that's not all. They're also involved with Global Bees, which helps smaller brands make it big online.
Quite a diverse portfolio they've got going on there.
For sure. It shows they're not messing around. They want to be a major player in the baby and kids market.
More than a player, a powerhouse.
Exactly. And this quarter, they've got some serious bragging rights. Brainbees just had their most profitable quarter in 4 years.
Wow, really?
Yeah, their consolidated adjusted EBITDA, that's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
Yeah, I know what EBITDA is.
Of course you do. But get this. It's up a crazy 54% for the 9-month period compared to last year at the same time.
That's impressive, 54%.
Yeah.
Especially in this economy. That shows they're doing something right, for sure. It
Right.
speaks to their strategy and how efficiently they're running things.
Agreed. Color me impressed.
Yeah.
But I'm also picking up on something else. They mentioned they could have done even better in Q3. What's the story there?
Well, a couple things seem to be at play. First, some big festivals in India, like Dussehra and Durga Puja, happened earlier this year.
Oh,
Yeah, and that means some of that spending probably happened in Q2 instead of Q3.
So not really a demand problem, just a timing thing.
Could be. But it's worth thinking about whether there are any deeper trends happening too. They also mentioned that winter was late this year, which messed with their winter wear sales.
Interesting.
Think about it. Kids grow like weeds. They need new clothes all the time.
Yeah.
And a late winter can really throw off those buying patterns and affect sales predictions.
I see. So something as simple as the weather can have a domino effect on their whole business, especially when you consider inventory and profits. It's amazing how these things can impact a company's bottom line. You know what else I remember reading about? They closed some stores, right?
Yes, you're right. They did.
Weren't they just going big on opening company-owned stores?
That's right. This is the first time they've closed stores since they started that expansion.
Interesting. So this is a pretty big deal.
It is. It might mean they're changing their strategy, maybe because the market is shifting or they're trying to get more out of each store. It's something to keep an eye on.
Definitely. Now let's talk about something that's clearly working for them. Their home brands. They're not just riding the wave, they're making it. They're actually doing even better than their overall India multi-channel business. That's pretty incredible.
Their home brands are definitely resonating with customers, especially Baby Hug. Think about this. Baby Hug is the biggest brand for mothers, babies, and kids in India by gross merchandise value. And they think it might have the largest product assortment in all of Asia Pacific, except for China.
Wait, hold on. Did you just say that one brand Baby Hug might have more variety than entire countries worth of baby stuff?
It is remarkable, isn't it?
That's insane. It really shows how focused they are on building these home brands and how well they understand this huge, diverse market. It's a big part of why they're growing and making so much money.
Definitely a key part of their success.
Okay, so we've got record profit, some interesting challenges in India, and these home brands that are absolutely crushing it. What about their international stuff? How are things going in the Middle East?
Well, that's where things get a little different. While their India business is booming, their international efforts, especially in the Middle East, are facing a real test.
Trouble in paradise?
In a way.
Are they hitting a wall of competition?
Exactly. Brainbees mentioned 2 new e-commerce players who've jumped into the Middle Eastern market, and they're playing hardball. Think aggressive discounts, price wars, the works.
Sounds like the classic new kids on the block trying to shake things up scenario. But here's what I find really interesting. Brainbees is taking a different approach. They're not getting sucked into that discount frenzy.
You're right, not.
Instead, they're focused on sustainable growth and profits over chasing every single customer.
It's a bold move, for sure. Especially when you think about how tempting those quick wins from discounting can be. Makes you wonder if they can afford to hold back when these new players seem willing to sacrifice profits just to grab market share.
That's the million-dollar question, right? It
Yeah.
almost makes you think, are they being a little too idealistic? Or is this a sign that they believe in their brand and think they can attract customers who care more about quality and experience than the absolute lowest price?
It's definitely a gamble, but it also shows their long-term vision.
Right.
Remember, they had similar challenges in India going up against those huge e-commerce giants. Maybe they think they can repeat that success in a new market.
So they're playing the long game, betting on their brand's strength and their ability to offer something truly special. It's a risky strategy, but if they pull it off, it could be huge. Okay, let's switch gears for a bit and talk about Global Fees, their platform for DTC brands. How are they doing in all of this?
Well, their growth slowed down a bit this quarter, mainly because of a timing issue. Remember those annual sales promotions we talked about on those big online marketplaces? Global Bees relies a lot on those platforms, and the shift in timing affected their Q3 numbers.
Ah, another timing curveball. But is the core business still healthy, or is this a sign of something more serious?
It's too early to say for sure, but over the 9 months, Global BB's revenue still grew by a solid 29%, which suggests things are moving in the right direction. And get this, their adjusted EBITDA increased by a factor of 5.9 compared to last year.
Whoa, almost 6 times more profitable? That's a massive improvement. It sounds like they're figuring out how to be more efficient and optimize their operations, even with that little dip in growth.
Exactly. They're not just focused on getting bigger, they're also laying a strong foundation for sustainable growth.
So even with the challenges, Global Bees seems to be making smart moves and finding their place in the D2C world. Now, we've covered a lot already, but before we go any deeper, let's take a step back and recap what we've learned.
Good idea. It's
Right.
always helpful to pause and think about the key takeaways.
Right. So here's what we know. Brainbees is on a roll in India with their best quarter in years. Their home brands are a big reason for this success, with amazing growth and profitability. But internationally, they're facing a whole new level of competition in the Middle East, which is making them make some tough decisions. And their DDC platform, Global Bees, is showing strong profitability even though their growth has slowed a little. What a ride.
A lot happening, for sure. It's like we're seeing a company at a turning point, dealing with both wins and challenges. The big question now is, can Brainbees keep this momentum going in India while weathering the storm in the Middle East? Can they find that sweet spot between growing and staying profitable when the competition is getting fiercer?
And that's exactly what we'll be exploring as we keep digging into Brainbees' performance. Stay tuned because things are about to get even more interesting.
This whole situation in the Middle East, it's interesting how Brainbees is handling the pressure. They're not just reacting, they're making choices that seem to be part of a bigger plan.
So no knee-jerk reactions with crazy discounts. It's like they're doubling down on what makes them stand out.
Exactly. They're playing up their strengths, their knowledge of this market, their curated selection of products, and of course, those powerful home brands. It's like they believe that's what will attract the right kind of customer, even if it means giving up some market share for now.
It's brave, especially when everyone seems obsessed with getting a deal. I mean, who doesn't love a discount? It makes you wonder if they're being a little too optimistic.
There's always a chance of that. But remember, they've dealt with this kind of thing before in India. They went head-to-head with those giant e-commerce companies. Maybe that's given them the confidence to stick to their plan.
Like they're saying, we've done this before, we know what we're doing. We're not going to change just to win a quick battle. They're in it for the long run. But let's be real. What if those discounts are just too tempting? What if they lose market share and can't get it back?
Those are good points, and there's no guarantee this will work perfectly. But if we look at the bigger picture, consumers are getting smarter. They're not always looking for the cheapest thing. They want value, quality, and brands they can trust, especially when it comes to stuff for their kids.
Yeah, that makes sense. When it comes to our kids, we're willing to pay more for brands we trust and experiences that meet our needs.
Right. And Brainbees seems to be betting on that. The parents, especially in this market, are looking for more than just a good price. They want peace of mind, convenience, a sense of community.
Speaking of community, you mentioned their home brands. How are they using those to connect with customers?
In a few ways. First, they're really focusing on developing great products. They're making sure their home brands have high-quality, innovative stuff that parents actually need. Second, they're creating a strong brand identity, building an emotional connection with customers through stories, engaging content, and targeted marketing. And third, they're using their home brands to create a sense of exclusivity, offering products you can only get through them.
So it's not just slapping a label on something, they're building brands that parents can connect with and trust.
Exactly. And that trust leads to loyalty and repeat customers, which is what you need to build a sustainable and profitable business.
This seems to be working really well in India, but can they do the same thing in the Middle East? Is it just a matter of tweaking their strategy, or do they need something totally new?
Probably a bit of both. Their core values and brand building could probably carry over, but they'll need to pay attention to the cultural differences and what consumers like in the Middle East.
So finding that balance between staying true to themselves and being flexible enough for a new audience.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right? Now, what about global bees? They're pretty new to the D2C world, but they're making a splash. How does that fit into Brainbees' overall strategy?
Good question. They seem to be doing their own thing, but I wonder how their success affects the bigger picture.
Global Bees is interesting. They're like a combination of an incubator and accelerator for these D2C brands, giving them the resources and know how to grow quickly.
So they're not just throwing money around. They're actively helping these brands succeed. It's like a venture capital arm inside a retail giant looking for the next big thing and helping it grow.
That's a great way to put it. And it creates this synergy. Brainbees can use its huge retail network and customer base to help Global Bees brands get in front of more people. And Global Bees gives Brainbees access to the latest trends and innovations in the D2C world.
So everybody wins. They're not just playing the game, they're changing it. They're actively shaping the future of this whole industry. They're playing the long game, not just for themselves, but for everyone.
Exactly. They're creating the wave, not just riding it. So we've really dug into their current performance and strategy. But what about the future? What's coming next for this company?
That's what I want to know. They've definitely made a name for themselves in India, but can they keep it up? The market is always changing, and there are always new challenges.
You're right. It's never a static situation. What customers want is constantly shifting. New competitors are popping up and technology is disrupting everything. To stay ahead of the curve, Brainbees has to be adaptable and innovative.
So what challenges do you see coming up?
To stay on top in India, they'll have to keep innovating and adapting. They'll need to predict trends, adjust their offerings, and keep investing in technology and logistics to keep customers happy. And then there's international expansion. They've made a big move into the Middle East, but doing the same thing in other markets won't be easy.
Every market is different. A one-size-fits-all approach won't cut it.
Right. They'll have to be flexible and willing to learn from their mistakes. Culture regulations, competition, it can all be so different from one place to the next.
So a lot of research and planning is going to be crucial for their international expansion. What about global bees? They've had amazing growth and profits, but can they keep that up as they get bigger?
That's another big challenge. As they take on more brands, they'll need to make sure they have the resources and infrastructure to support that growth.
Yeah.
And they can't spread themselves too thin. They need to stay focused on what they do best.
It's a balancing act. Growth is important, but it has to be strategic to be sustainable and profitable. They'll have to make some tough choices about which brands to back, which markets to go after, and how to use their resources wisely.
Exactly. It's complicated.
Mm.
But based on what they've done so far, they seem to be pretty good at making smart decisions and handling complex situations.
Mm.
So before we finish this part of our deep dive, what stood out to you the most about Brainbees?
It's hard to choose. There's so much going on. But I'd say it's their willingness to do things their own way. They're not just following the crowd. They're making bold choices based on what they know about the market and their commitment to creating long-term value.
I agree. They're not afraid to be different, even if it means taking risks. They're playing the long game, focused on building a business that can weather any storm.
It's great to see a company that's not just about making a quick buck, but about building something that matters.
It reminds us that in today's world, it's more important than ever to have a vision, strong values, and the guts to make decisions that might not be popular right now, but will be good for the business in the long run.
Yeah, it's really cool to see a company that's not just about the money, but about building something that really makes a difference. And they're doing all of this while sticking to their goal of making parenting easier and happier.
That's so important. It's easy to get lost in the numbers, but in the end, Brainbee's success depends on how well they connect with parents.
Yeah.
They get it. You know, raising kids is hard, but it's also amazing. And they want to be there for parents every step of the way.
Like they're saying, we're parents too. We understand, and we're here to help. It's that connection that builds trust.
Exactly. And you can see that in everything they do, from the products they choose to their customer service. It's about creating a whole experience, not just buying and selling.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Brainbees, what's the big takeaway for our listeners? What should they be paying attention to as this company keeps growing and changing?
I think the question that will really shape Brainbee's future is this. Can they keep this balance between growth profits and their values as they deal with more competition and move into new markets?
Yeah, it's a tough balancing act. But if they can do it, they could become a huge global player.
I think so too. And I'm really curious to see what happens with their home brands. Will they make their existing brands even bigger? Will they launch new brands for different markets? And how will they use those brands to build even stronger connections with customers?
Good questions. It'll be interesting to see what they do. One thing's for sure, Brainbees isn't afraid to think big and take chances. They're a great example of how to build a successful business in a world that's constantly changing.
They're proving that you can be financially successful and stay true to your values while making a positive impact.
Well said. So that's a wrap on our deep dive into Brainbees Solutions Limited. It's been fascinating, and I'm sure we'll be talking about them again as they continue to grow.
I'm sure we will. Until then, keep diving deep and remember, knowledge is power.
And with the deep dive, you'll always have the insights you need to understand the business world. Thanks for joining us.